back against the rope. 2 minutes to his name right now in an endgame, but still plenty of pieces on the board. It's a knight and a rook, and it's 5 pawns apiece. This is exactly the kind of situation where while the bar says relative equality, you have to believe Magnus is still capable of working some magic.
This is the best position Magnus has had all game, all day, all final. But, of course, still miles ahead. The potential victory, he still needs a bit of a helping hand from Levon. At least he's got a pass pawn, he's got an active king, and now he's got an attack. Tanya, can he do it?
You know, it's sort of starting to have the resemblance and the making of a classic vintage Magnus endgame, this one does. Out of nowhere, he suddenly got these trumps that you're pointing out, and there's an imbalance in the position, right? The 4 versus 3 right now comes to nothing. All of Magnus's attention is on the left flank of the board. It's the king assisting the c-pawn. The white knight beautifully guards any threats against that pawn. The rook is getting active, and this is when pressure starts to be... Levon starts to feel pressure. And that can lead to cracks. That can lead to mistakes. Magnus has made progress 100% here, and I think he's sensing it. The only problem, the clock.
Body language completely mirrored between these two.
And so different. Magnus leaned back hopelessly at the start of the game, you know, not getting anything. Trades the queens and kind of just resets himself, resigns himself to this thing that, okay, this is going to be an endgame. I need to grind this down. And now he's locked in. When Magnus is in a locked-in situation, you know that he's feeling it. He feels that there are chances. Levon will have to be careful in this endgame.
This is difficult. This is anti-Levon chess. This is how to get him. He occasionally does lose games where he plays a bit passive. If he doesn't have his kind of typical charisma, his energy that we've seen throughout this tournament, if he has an off day, this is how he tends to get caught out. So, I don't know. I think Magnus has great chances here. The black rook is now really passive, and Magnus steps forward, kicking away the knight. The white knight now is free. This one is turning in Magnus's favor. How many times have we said that before?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you start feeling it. You've got to be feeling the tension here. Magnus, completely different Magnus from what we had 10 minutes ago. The white knight about to land on d4 to kick that rook out to further the march of the c-pawn. More than us, I mean, everyone, the fans, Levon's got to be feeling this shift in energy in the playing arena right now.
Yeah, it's a rarity that you see him again head in hands, right? He's usually so comfortable, so loose, and now you can start to feel the tension creeping into his body.
When he took those queens off the board, this is exactly what Magnus envisaged. He was like, okay, it's going to be a long game. Probably I have no objective advantage for the next 20, 30 moves. But eventually I'll get a chance. Eventually I'll scare you into going passive. I'm going to get an active king. I'm going to get pass pawn. And good luck defending. That was essentially the narrative. That was the question Magnus asked. And Levon said, okay, I'll take the queens off. I'll draw it anyway. But you have to put your money where your mouth is. And he finds a good square for his knight, gaining time on the white rook. He's going to go back around. I think that's the important thing. The black knight needs an outpost. It's thirsting for one. But still, the big questions are ahead.
And as you can see within the gallery, every angle of this game being covered.
Magnus trying to play on every angle of the board. You know, he wants to get his knight from the right side towards the center. The king and the rook beautifully combining to put pressure. Levon's arguing that I've created a fortress. With my rook and my pawn, your king can't go anywhere forward. My knight will do the counter offense once it reroutes itself. Magnus is far away from any tangible advantage here, but he's definitely got something to play for here. That c5 pawn, the white knight looking for inroads.
Anyone else, we would say, oh, it's just level. But Magnus, we're like, oh, it's somewhere between clearly better and much better. That's the type of position. But he does have under 1 minute now.
Yes.
So that could trip up Magnus. You need to be razor sharp. You need to be so accurate in order to win these types of positions. And as the clock ticks down, Levon's still with a bank of 9 minutes. Not going to be easy.
Levon's been so smart with his clock management. The thing is that Magnus, with little time on the clock, there's a huge chance those inaccuracies will happen, and Levon will have enough time to cash in on those. But he'd have to be super alert.
Yeah, it's the type of position. If Magnus makes one small inaccuracy, Levon might be able to force a draw on the spot here or in the near future. Magnus moves his rook across. Very logical, defending his pawn. The white knight just needs to get in. Knight c4, knight a5. Something along those lines, and Magnus can turn the magic on. But he needs time. Levon has a couple of moves.
The one thing that I think Levon has to avoid is a creation that Magnus might be aiming for a passer on that right side as well. The C-pawn, and eventually maybe dreaming of a trade on G5 and then to push that H-pawn if Levon was forced to capture towards the center. And I think those are the kind of endgames, if you're Levon Aronian, you really want to avoid. Pawn takes pawn, H takes pawn, and then the H-pawn moving forward.
Yeah, playing on both sides of the board. One pass pawn or one avenue of attack, often not enough. Oh, it's so tense in there. We see the audience as well. They don't know what to expect. They don't know which way it's going. They know it's a typical Magnus position, but the stakes are higher than ever, and the clock is lower than ever for Magnus.
He's squeezed with less than what he has on the board right now against Levon. And this is definitely something to play for. And it's amazing how you can look at him and you just know how much the position has shifted.
Yeah, that body language, as you said, James, for Levon now, so locked in because he knows that the next few moves are crucial.
Yeah, it's like mirrored physicalities, but one gives you a slight sense of despair and the other one gives you a slight sense of hope.
Yeah, it's like the hunter. He smells a bit of blood. The other one is being chased. Oh, is he going to be resistant, though, to this squeeze, the Magnus press?
The wound isn't big enough for a lot of blood dropping just yet.
That feels pretty committal.
Takes a decision.
Yeah, be careful. Magnus might take with the pawn now. And there we go. There's a weakness. Here, Levon has two isolated pawns. Both of them can be attacked by the white rook. They're on opposite flanks as well. The white rook is such a good long-range piece.
And Black's rook can defend one, but who's going to defend the other one? It's time for Levon to get that knight into the game. Find some targets. Get that piece on the d5 square.
Yeah.
He goes the other way, hits the rook, inviting Magnus. But rook h3, does he want to go for knight jumping onto e2, putting pressure on f4? Is that the idea? Up Levon's sleeve.
Potentially, that is the idea. Maybe he wants to also break in the center. He wants to push his e-pawn forward, cement his knight, defend with his rook across the 6th rank. But that does also feel a bit flimsy. Magnus is going to go pawn hunting. There we go.
Exactly. Just feels like he encouraged Magnus to go after that pawn by threatening with his knight.
Oh my goodness. This is starting to get very shaky for Black. And Levon has to take some decisions.
One way to defend it.
Oh, if he goes back with his knight, then both of his pieces are on defensive posts. That feels wrong. Then the white knight is going to start breaking the blockade, kicking the black rook away. He has to go active, I think.
So instead we counterattack. Which pawn are we targeting?
Can only really target the f-pawn now. That's isolated without a defender.
You have to go on the counter offense. I also like the idea of creating that e-passer. And hopefully laterally the black rook will defend both pawns if there's a trade at the center of the board.
It's not just that, but getting pawns off the board here. I think the end goal for Levon Aronian is to get a rook and knight versus rook endgame. If he's able to trade off all of the white pawns, even at the cost of his knight, it's a draw. Rook and knight versus rook. Very straightforward draw at this level. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. So I think e5 achieves a couple of goals. It defends maybe along the 6th rank, but it also gets one more pawn off the board. Magnus will only have 3 left.
I believe what Levon potentially is calculating is because after that pawn moves forward, Magnus will be forced to trade. You don't want to defend that f-pawn, you don't want to give it away. And after that trade, you've left behind this d5 square for the white king to infiltrate via. So the line that's going on potentially in Levon's mind is takes, king marching up towards the right side, threatening to dislodge the black rook, attacking the pawn as well. And this at least looks dangerous from far away.
Looks very dangerous. If I didn't have the eval bar in front of me, I would say that white already has quite a big advantage, especially the trend of the game. The psychology, I mean, where it was, he does play this move, e5, but where it was half an hour ago compared to where it is now, it looked like 0 danger for black. Now, big danger as Magnus needs to move quick.
Yeah, almost immediately recaptured.
He's got very little time on the clock, so Magnus under 30 seconds has to make quick decisions. Pawn takes pawn has to be the move here.
You just saw him check in with his clock. Now down to 20 seconds, makes a move back up to 35. He decides to snap that pawn off. That does mean there is an e-pawn that could eventually become a queen, but just as you said, Tanya, he's going to use this opportunity to bring his king towards the center, maybe dislodge that rook.
It's a very clear path in, and then the white knight has a beautiful square at the center of the board. Levon preempting it, wants to look for rook activity on the 2nd rank.
Problem is, as soon as the black rook gets active and starts kind of going to munch pawns, white's king is moving in, white's knight is moving in. The white rook is going to get up to start checking the black king. It's an active king against a passive king. Checkmating ideas in the air.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, this is Magnus 101. This is where he thrives. The king has entered.
The last 20 moves, it almost feels like Magnus has outclassed Levon in this endgame.
Yeah, there would only be one square for the king to defend, but it could easily get kicked away by the knight soon after. So instead, if you want to defend this, you have to give up one of your pawns on that 6th rank. Instead, he's going to drop his knight back.
Ooh, good
Huge.
move. Threatening a knight fork, and Magnus is saying, do you dare trade? Rook trade offered. Wow, that is brave. He's saying he has enough pawns left to win this.
It's very famous, right? Knight pawn endgames are almost like king pawn endgames, and that's the feeling that you get. If rook's off the board, Magnus should have a close to winning advantage with that very active king, a super passer, the e5 pawn under check right now, the knight poised to jump on to e4. Rook takes rook could be a losing move here.
Rook takes rook looks really bad.
Yeah.
Like, maybe if one extra set of pawns were off the board and you could just focus on one half, but while pawns are split so far across the board, knights cannot fight, especially because Levon will end up a pawn down there. So if not that, then what? If he moves his rook across, the white knight is coming with gain of time. If you give some checks, the white king is just gobbling up the pawn in the center. Levon might have to give up a pawn to hold this position. This is so difficult now.
And the thing is, we've got the bar telling us things are still under check for Levon. It's still in the balance, but he's got to be having the feeling that things have completely gone out of control for him.
Yeah. Spiraling. It feels like this game.
Yeah. I think both players in their mind know that white is clearly, or they assume that white is clearly better. We see the eval bar in the center. That's because black probably has a really narrow path of maybe half a dozen or more accurate moves in a row just to hold in the short term.
And it's either of those knight checks.
It has to be a knight check. He
gives
finds
one of them.
At least there, his knight will not get hit when the white king takes this pawn now.
I mean, Magnus is about to go up a pawn. That's the first tangible advantage he's gotten in the game.
Yeah, this is great defense, though, from Levon. He finds the best way forward. He's getting his rook active. That is the key. You cannot defend passively. The black knight and black king are passive, so he needs one active piece at least to compensate.
That's very brave as well, because the white rook is also ready to jump into the 7th rank, giving checks of his own. Magnus Carlsen up a pawn. Will it be enough? He goes to the other side of the board.
Okay, looks like he wanted to go towards his pawn, but there might have been some nasty knight checks in the air. This square at least helps the king cover the knight jump in the near future. Levon, how does he justify the fact he's a pawn down now?
Well, it feels like it's got to be what you said. Get that rook in.
Yeah.
To the 2nd rank. Hit both knight and the h-pawn at the same time. Instead, he's going to slide over for another check.
And maybe another one as well, asking a question again, which side do you want to go with your king?
Ooh, but another check now. At least white would be able to guard the 2nd rank, and there'll be no infiltration. So is it now or never with the black rook?
He
decides it is.
Takes.
Oh, that's what's on the line right there. $200,000 and the title of freestyle chess champion in South Africa.
Magnus about to do Magnus things in this endgame is the feeling that we're getting right now. The rook comes in, attacks the knight and the pawn. But Magnus about to play with all his pieces. He gives in a check. The king has to fall back to defend the knight.
Yeah, he is closer than ever, though, Levon. He's going to get at least one pawn on the next move once the white knight saves itself. Then he's probably going to get the other pawn on the other side of the board. And then it's just a question of whether he can sacrifice his knight for white's remaining pawn, the powerful c-pawn. If he can sacrifice it, get all of white's pawns off the board, he's going to draw.
My heart's beating out of my chest. I can only imagine what these two players are thinking and feeling in this moment.
Especially Magnus down to 20 seconds.
That's right.
And Levon knowing that it's just so close. Magnus has to make a move. Now under 15 seconds for him.
Time always a factor.
He wants to jump in with a knight, but where does he go? He gives a check instead.
He wants to buy himself some time.
Ooh, big question for Levon, though. Can he improve his king, or does he just have to repeat the position? Can he go towards the white pawn in the near future? That feels a bit scary because you'll also be walking closer to the white knight. I think.
Yeah, for Levon, the best part is that he's got time on the clock for these difficult decisions, these difficult questions that Magnus is posing on him right now. Levon has time to navigate these decisions. You know, with everything on the line, the pressure, the nerves of the title being so close for Levon, playing against Magnus. If he gets this draw, it would be a massive achievement.
He's looking for this, the storybook finish against Magnus Carlsen to put him away in an endgame, right? To have done already what is the unthinkable and take the decisive win in game number 1. If you can hold him off here in game number 2 and get it done, he's looking for it. And he decides he's going to just slide his king up to the e7 square. Another point of safety, getting 15 seconds back, says Magnus, you're the one who has to win. You're the one who has to take a stab.
Okay, he repeats, but he's not going to do it again. The king falls back. Magnus adds some time to the clock. 10 seconds. The knight jumps forward.
Okay, Levon is going to grab one of the 2 pawns. I'm not sure whether the order matters here, but you have to get those pawns off the board. They're potential future queens, and he knows that survival lies in an endgame without those white pawns.
But Magnus is heading towards that black king, right? Knight landing on d4, coming in with some checks. The white king also closing in via e5 and d6, looking for a mating net.
Maybe, but the black knight is such a good defender. The white pieces will need a lot of luck to coordinate and get past the king and knight combo. I think Magnus knows that he just can't create any threats in time. Levon, though, double-checking everything.
But that's the hope, that's the dream, right? Magnus does need a little bit of luck to take this to tie breaks.
Decides the h-pawn is the one that he wants. Magnus is going to use his single passer to move up one more square, kind of clamp down on the black position just a little bit, less opportunities, or options rather, for the black king to go to. And yes, threatening that check from the rook as well.
But black could just snap up that a2 pawn, right? And then Magnus has to go for the kill.
Yeah, Magnus, I don't know if he's bluffing or not, but he's trying to set one final trap here. And that's always how it works. It's still a level endgame. It has been the whole time. But Levon's been on the back foot the last few moves. But there will come a time where there might only be one move for survival. Magnus is going to try and narrow the path. He's going to hope that Levon's down under the 1 minute mark. And then he's going to say, okay, you have an only move. If you find it, draw. If not, good luck. It's a check first.
Yeah, he doesn't go pawn grabbing.
Wants to go behind maybe in some positions.
Yeah,
if the white king steps up, then the black rook goes, I think, behind. It's still scary. There are some knight fork ideas in the air for both sides.
Yeah, very interestingly, the white king can't land on that d6 square because of the defensive resource of knight jumping back to e8 with a fork. So Magnus falls back with the king, controls that c4 square.
Yeah, very important to stop the black rook going behind. It's another check.
Where do you go, David? Because c5, if you get your king to c5, there's a knight e6 fork. You get your king to d6, there's a knight e8 fork. Where is Magnus's king finding inroads?
Maybe he doesn't find inroads. Maybe this is just a fantastic idea from Levon. When in doubt, give a check. That's what I was told when I was playing a lot of blitz chess, and it was a rook endgame. And yeah, here, the white king just cannot bypass. Even if it steps forward, it will get checked again. And as Tanya said, there's no way past the 5th rank. The king is so passive now, though.
Does he keep checking? Does he continue? Or will Levon get his pieces into activity? Magnus Carlsen, a little bit of frustration there as he goes under the 30-second mark. He's done everything to create his chances, but Levon up to the task.
Stalwart as ever in his defense here, Levon Aronian, against the endgame master of Magnus Carlsen.
This is why he's been unbeaten throughout this whole week so far. Levon defending some difficult positions, but always doing it confidently, actively. He can keep checking. That looks fine too. He can move his knight. I think those are the 2 candidate moves here, the 2 candidate ideas at least. Which one's it going to be?
The one path I see for the white king could be via c3, b4, a5. You go diagonally to try to infiltrate on the other flank. If Levon was to keep checking, and maybe that's why he's taken a pause.
Yeah, Magnus has an idea up his sleeve. He always does. But now Levon's clock is ticking under 3 minutes. He's about to decide. He moves his knight finally off a really passive square. Great decision. Now the white king is so far away. The black rook and black knight can fight the enemy pieces. He's got enough in the action. He gains time against the white rook.
And you've got to keep that rook on the 7th rank if you're Magnus Carlsen, not allowing the black king to step up.
He's going to give a check. King will slide out of the way, but still blockading that promotion square from that pawn.
Hits the knight. And Levon. Is he going to go back all the way next to the king to put pressure on c6, or will he bring it in front to to block that c-pawn from moving forward. I don't think you want to go offside on that right side of the board. You want to keep that knight as close as possible to the white pawn.
I think he can force a draw here, or at least a draw in endgame. There we go. He goes back. If the white knight now defends its pawn, he can just attack the knight. There's no way to defend because you can take that knight off the board. If the white king steps forward, there's going to be a knight check, a knight fork.
Wow.
Worst case scenario, you give up your knight now for this pawn and you just go check and you take the a2 pawn and it's rook and knight versus rook. That's a draw.
And it's the same story if the knight defends from a5. You could give a check or you could slide it all over to a3. So with no defense possible, Magnus pushes the pawns moments away from Levon potentially winning the Grand Slam.
Yeah. Quick responses here from Levon as well, as Magnus continues to reach for resources, continues to extend the game, as he's so classically known to do.
But Black's found the perfect way to just separate the white army. Look at the lack of coordination. The white rook now so far away from the knight. The pawn has been distanced. Now he's going back, Levon Aronian. He's going to slide his rook across, going to bring it back. He's going to eliminate that white pawn. That is going to secure the draw he needs.
That is stunning. That is so precise. He stops the white knight from jumping in. A single check on Levon Aronian would be game over for him. He's making sure that Magnus's knight isn't going anywhere. Look at the way he's dominating, and there it is!
And he does it. Levon Aronian, undefeated run through South Africa to become your 5th Grand Slam champion and to go back to close out his 2025.
Wow.
Levon Aronian, look at the celebrations. He deserves it. He's going to be rewarded with a kiss there. And yeah, that was just a fantastic display of determination, focus, endurance, everything.
This is amazing. Levon Aronian just defies the odds. He takes down mighty Magnus, wins the final Grand Slam. That's 2 belts for Levon Aronian, finishing 2nd even in the overall tour standings, as does Levon. The only thing that makes this sweeter is the feeling of overcoming the final boss in chess.